Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another video. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you will be updated on all my future content. So this live stream is going to focus on subtraction with decimals. Our first subtraction problem is 8 minus 3 7/10, and I'm going to go through step by step how to solve that problem. So step one, we want to line up all the numbers. Now with whole numbers, the decimal point is always behind all of the digits. So there is a decimal point in whole numbers, but we sort of treat it like it's invisible because it's always behind all of the digits. And when both numbers in the problem are whole numbers, you don't really need it. So for the number 8, the decimal point would simply be behind the 8. Now, if there is no number behind the decimal point, if there's nothing behind the decimal point, the number is simply 0. So you would simply fill a 0 in there. And then from there, it's simple subtraction. It's simple as regrouping, subtracting, using place value, and lining up the decimal point in the correct place. So we regroup just as we would with any whole number. The 8 becomes a 7, the 0 becomes a 10, and now we are ready to subtract. So we always subtract starting with the digits all the way to the right. So 10 minus 7 equals 3. 7 minus 3 equals 4. Now the final step, the very last step, is to line up the decimal point. There's one number, there's one digit behind the decimal point in each of the numbers we're subtracting, so there has to be one number behind the decimal point in our answer. So we have our final answer, 8 minus 3 7/10 equals 4 3/10. All right, moving on to the next example. It's the Mr. Camilleri show. It's the Mr. C. It's the Mr. Camilleri show. Shout out to Mr. C. So we have 7 43/100 minus 5 1/10. So step one, we want to line up all the numbers. So we have the ones place, the tenths place, and the hundredths place. Now, since there's no bottom digit in the hundredths place, whenever there's no bottom digit in a given number, we assume that the number is 0. So we're going to put a 0 in there. And now we are ready to subtract. So 3 minus 0 equals 3. 4 minus 1 also equals 3. 7 minus 5 equals 2. Now the final step, we have to line up the decimal point in the correct place. There are 2 digits behind each of the decimal points for the numbers we're subtracting. So there has to be 2 digits behind the decimal points in our final answer. So we have our final answer, 7 43/100 minus 5 1/10, or 5 10/100 equals 2 33/100. Moving on to the next example problem. So 1/10 or 10/100, same value, same problem. It's just really a different way of saying it. All right, next example. This will probably be the final example of the live stream. Make that a little bit neater. All right. So again, no digit in the hundredths place. So when there's no digit in a certain place, we assume when there's a digit missing, we assume that digit's a 0. Now we are ready to subtract. Actually, before we subtract, we have to regroup. We regroup whenever there's a bottom digit bigger than the top digit. So The 9 becomes an 8. The 4 becomes a 14. And now we are ready to subtract. 1 minus 0 equals 1. 14 minus 5 equals 9. 8 minus 7 equals 1. Now the final step, we have to line up the decimal point. There are 2 digits behind each of the decimal points for the numbers we're subtracting. So there has to be 2 digits behind the decimal point in the answer. So we have our final answer, 9 41/100 minus 7 50/100 equals 1 91/100. All right, moving on to the next example problem. Shout out to everybody tuning in. Please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm. I am so glad you're here. All right, next example problem. Here we go. So we have 9 minus 7 43/100. So with any whole number, we assume the decimal points behind all the numbers. So we're going to put a decimal point behind the 9. And whenever there's a number missing, remember, whenever there's a number missing, we assume the number there would be 0. There's nothing there, you can just put a 0 in. So we're going to put in our 2 zeros. Now we have 9 minus 7 43/100. So we're going to do our regrouping first. The 9 becomes an 8. The 10 becomes a 10. Then the other 0, the 0 becomes a 10. The 0 becomes a 10. Then the other 0 also becomes a 10. And then the 10 becomes a 9 because we have to take away 1. And now we are ready to subtract. 10 minus 3 equals 7. 9 minus 4 equals 5. 8 minus 7 equals 1. Then the final step, we have to line up the decimal point in the correct place. There are 2 digits behind each of the decimal points for the numbers we're subtracting. So there has to be 2 digits behind the decimal point in our answer. So we're going to put our decimal point right in between the 1 and the 5. And we have our final answer. 9 minus 7 43/100 equals 1 57/100. All right, that is my live stream for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of the video. And if there is an area of math or reading that you're having difficulty with, put that in the comments, and I'll try to do a future video on that skill. Until next time, this is Mr. Camilleri, signing off.